Yasoda Nandana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balaba Giranadhari Balaba Giranadhari Gopi Jana Balaba Giranadhari Balaba Giranadhari Yasodanandana Bhajagana Nanda Bhajagana Yasodanandana Bhajagana Ranjana Nanda Bhajagana Yamunatira Vanachari Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Om Vishnu Pada Bhagavacharya Satarya Satashishi Mad His Divine Grace H.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Gauda Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Sako Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gauda Bhaktivedanta Ki ISKCON founder Srila Prabhupada Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Dham Ki Navadvip Dham Ki Jamuna Mai Ki Ganga Mai Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Shri Shri Radha Golokananda Ki Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Gora Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, Shri Guru and Ranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevayam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevayam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevayam. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, Chapter 45, text number 2, and we're going to also do text number 3. Uvacha. Ah, 10:45 too. Uvacha Pitara Etya Uvacha Pitara Vetya Sagraja Satvanar Sabha Sagraja Satvanar Sabha Prasrayavanata Prinan Prasrayavanata Prinan Abha Tateti Sadaram Abha Tateti Sadaram Uvacha Pitara Vetya Sagraja Satvanar Sabha Prasrayavanata Prinan Abata Teti Sadaran Uvacha Pitara Vetya Sagraja Satvarna Sabha Prasrayavanata Prinan Abata Teti Sadaram Uvacha Pitara Vetya Sagraja Satvarna Shava Prasrayavanata Prinam Abata Teti Sadaram. Okay. Uvacha Pitara Vetya Sharaniratapitam Abata Teti Sadaram Uvacha Pitara Vetya Sagraja Satvana Shava Prasraya Vadata Prinam Abata Teti Sardanam Uvacha Pitara Vetya Sagraja Satvana Nastinam Avata Teti Sadaram Uvacha Pitara Vitya Sagraja Satvanar Sabha Prasraya Vanata Prinam Abata Teti Sadaram Uvacha. He said, Pitara, to his parents, Itya, approaching them, Sa, together with Agraja, his elder brother, Lord Balaram, Satvata, of the Satvata dynasty, Vasavya, the greatest hero, Prashraya, with humility, Avanata, bowing down, Prinan, gratifying them. Abba tata iti. My dear mother, my dear father. Sa adram. Respectful. Respectfully. Translation. Lord Krishna, the greatest of the Sattvatas, approached his parents with his elder brother, humbly bowing his head and gratifying them by respectfully addressing them as my dear mother and my dear father. Krishna spoke as follows. So let's read Jiva Goswami's commentary, and then we'll a couple things to say, and we'll go on to what he spoke about. Jiva Goswami, my dear father, Krishna spoke as follows. How he spread Maya is now described. Interesting. After freeing them, he sent them home, and then came there. This is a little bit then he spoke. He engaged others to perform the rites for Kamsa and others. He was the best of the Sattvatas. He must therefore show mercy to the Yadus, who he had accepted as his family members. On seeing them, he began to show this mercy. Vishnu Purana says that Mohaya Yadu Chakrasya Vitanatasa Vaishnavim. He spread Yoga Maya for bewildering the Yadus. He went with Balaram in order to instill greater faith in his parents. By calling to them, he pleased them, and becoming joyful himself, he spoke with respect. He kind of did this when in the after lifting Govardhan Hill, and the cowherd men were getting together and saying, well, this is not a normal child. So he's got to be like Narayan, something's going on. This is not normal activity for an average person. So then Krishna had to kind of make some adjustments on Yoga Maya. Okay. Sanat Goswami, pretty much the same thing. So, we're like halfway through this 10th canto. And Krishna's 5 years? Okay, 5 years, halfway through. And we're going meticulously. Might as well take as long as we can, because this is the sweet spot, This is a nice place to be. And so we're dragging it out as much as you can. When you're in a nice situation, you want to stay in that situation as long as possible. One thing about, he defeated, and who he dealt with first, and what order he dealt with his mother or the queens, and in their agony. And the moment he defeated Kamsa, and then he defeated all his brothers, and the wrestlers, it's like, anybody else want some of this? He's like, he's the victor. At that point, he's established himself as the authority. He's taken over. And from that point, it's like, okay, he doesn't have to actually do everything himself. This will come out a little bit, but he just gives orders, take care of the rights, just get this done for them. They have some things to say, but he immediately starts administrating, deal with the funeral rites of Kamsa and the others. Later in this chapter, there's a lot of things that are going on in this chapter. A lot of stories, and one of us he establishes Ugrasena as the king. Right now, he's the king. Unless somebody wants to come up and challenge him, he's made that pretty clear. He's defeated all oncomers at this point, and so therefore but then he establishes his grandfather back as the king. He does this, which is a proper thing to do. Of course, he's going to do other things very quickly here, and of course, talking to his parents is one of them, and then going to school, which is kind of interesting because in this verses they talked about how tender his body was. There was some objection, why did you have to go that far? You're just at first they thought it was just a young. Which is some of the things we're going to talk about, but the Acharyas talk about. They focus on Krishna's age out of this. This is what they really tend to in these upcoming commentaries. And he deals with, but what in this chapter he deals with, he goes to school, and we see that those present, they saw this young boy with tender body. This was, one of the points of did you have to go so far? I mean, or they didn't really hurt you that bad, Did you have to, retaliate so strong? Because they seen him as just a tender boy. But when he goes to school, Sandamani Padi's school, he also sees them similarly. They're Kshatriyas. But when they come into school, this is in the Gopal Champu. He looks at him and he said, these two boys, they're not really buff, teenagers, and they're not really fit. They look like they've been living off of milk sweets, So the little bit different descriptions of how they perceive these boys who are supposed to be warriors and have this, they just, defeated Kamsa and all these, and they don't really look like, they could have taken on anybody. So, and then he gets Sandamani's sons. He retrieves his sons. Of course, fast forwarding, 85, he gets the Brahmin's son. He retrieves them. And then chapter 89, Devaki sees, I've done all this. Maybe he can get my sons back. So he retrieves her sons. And that's a whole story, because that's got a huge backstory. Of course, everything's got a backstory to it. But then it's, who are these, who are her children? They had laughed at Brahma. When Brahma had this issue with, he had his daughter. It's kind of interesting because he created her out of his mind, his daughter, and then she took a form of a stag. He took a form of a stag, and she was a deer, and he chased after her. And so these Marishis, they laughed at these demigods, and therefore they got cursed. We're just laughing at what he did, which is not really, I didn't have to say anything. They just had expressed their opinion by laughing. But that made them in a situation like they were smarter, they're superior. When you laugh at somebody like that, there's different types of laughing. There's laughing at condescending laughing, and then there's joking around with your friends laughing. So it's all comes down to relationship. And this is like oozing with personality and relationship with everybody that he's interacting with. So, it's just the intimacy that's developed through all these chapters here. It's, as we talked about, it's just very special for us. So let's see what he says here in text number 3. He said, Nasmato yuyayos tata nicho tanti tayorapi vayapagonda shorahi putrabhyam abhavam vachit. Lord Krishna said, my dear father, because of us, your two sons, you and Mother Devaki, always remained in anxiety and could never enjoy our childhood, boyhood, or youth. So Rinananda Goswami, pretty much it's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. I was just going to read Vishwanath. I think it's easier for everybody to follow along. I was going to skip this, but I'm going to read it, the purport by Srinanda Goswami, and he actually gives him credit right off the bat. Who's this? Where this came from? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti discusses this verse as follows. One may object that at this point, Lord Krishna had not actually passed the Kishore age 10 to 15, since the women of Mathura had stated, Vachati Sukumar Rango Kishora Napa Yavana. Krishna and Balaram have very tender limbs, being still in the Kishore age, not having reached adolescence. Srimad Bhagavatam 10:44-8. The definition of the different stages of growing is given as follows. So we see in that previous we talked about how they perceive Krishna. Kumaram Panchama Dattam Palgandam Dasma Das Samavadi Kishoram Apanchadasad Yavanam tu Tatat Param. The Kumara stage lasts until the age of 5, Balgunda up to age 10, and Kishora to age 15. From then on, one is known as Yavana. According to this statement, the Kishore period ends at the age 15. Krishna was only 11 years old when he killed Kamsa. According to Uddhava's words, Ikaras Samas Tatra Untariche Sabalo Vasat. Like a covered flame, Lord Krishna remained there incognito with Balaram for 11 years. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:26. That's a similar description to Devaki when she was in prison and Krishna was in the womb. It was described as like she had this effulgence, but it was like a candle you put something over the top of. You couldn't really see it because of her position in prison. It was covered over by the prison, but she had this same description, like a covered flame. And since Krishna and Balaram never took brahminical initiation in Rajabhumi, it was at the time of their going to Mathura that their Kishore age began rather than ended. This is, I guess, they're really important to make this point because Krishna never really matured past this. He's this eternal form. It's the way the Vaishnavas want to see Krishna. And we see a lot of these pictures. I do. I see a lot of these pictures online. Paintings of Krishna, these new art, new age paintings. And there's a lot of, not even ISKCON associated devotees, there's a lot of art out there on Krishna, modern art, I would call it. That Krishna looks like a, old man, not old, mature man, very, facial features and everything looks like someone 30, 40, 50 years old, and that, not 50, maybe 30, 40. But it's not how Krishna is to be seen by the Vaishnavas. Okay, so this objection toward Krishna's statement in the presented verse that his parents could not enjoy his Kishore age is based on ordinary measurement of age. Yet we should consider the following statement from the Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 8, text 26. Kalena pena rajashe Rama Krishnas cha go vraje agrishta janubi padvir vichak ramantur agyasa. O King Pariksit, within a short time, Ram and Krishna began to walk very easily in Gokul on their legs by their own strength without the need to crawl. Sometimes we see that the son of a king, even while in his Palganda stage of life, undergoes exceptional physical growth and exhibits activities appropriate to a Kishora. Then what to speak of Lord Krishna, whose exceptional growth is established in the Vaishnav Tosani, Bhakta Rasamrita Sindhu, Ananda Vrindavan Champu, and other works. The 3 years and 4 months that Lord Krishna stayed in Madhava were the equivalent of 5 years for an ordinary child. Thus, in that period, he completed his Kumara stage of childhood. This period from then to the age of 6 years and 8 months, during which he lived in Vrindavan, constitute his Bhaganda stage. And the period from the age of 6 years and 8 months to his 10th year, during which time he lived in Nandishvara, Nandagram, constitutes his Kishore age. Then at the age of 10 years and 7 months, on the 11th lunar day of the dark fortnight of the month of Chaitra, he went to Mathura, and on the 14th day thereafter, he killed Kamsa. Thus he completed this Kishore period at the age of 10, and eternally remains at that age. In other words, we should understand that from this point on, the Lord remains forever Kishore. Thus, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti analyzes the intricacies of this verse. It's kind of interesting how he breaks it down in each age group. He lived in a different place. So, Madhavan to Vrindavan, and then to Nandagram, Nandishvara. Then he comes to Mayapur, not Mayapur, Mathura. So, and in this verse, he calls because of us, he says. He kind of blames himself. So we talked about the humility that he's exhibiting. And because of us is because of the omen, right? So we know the story how on their wedding day, there was an omen from the sky that said that the 8th child will be the cause of your death, Kamsa. And so therefore, they were locked up. He killed all their children. So therefore, only to get at Krishna. So therefore, he was apologizing for that and thinking that is the reason for their being treated so poorly. Now, Krishna's, since making this up, another thing that's happening in this chapter is he has to say goodbye to his father and send him back home. So there's a lot of activity, a lot of things are going on in this chapter. There's a lot. This is covering a whole bunch. Things are moving kind of rapidly. Even though he said he spent a fortnight, 2 weeks has passed since he came to Mathura before he killed Kamsa, is mentioned by the Acharyas. So Krishna's reconciling that, and he also, they had been his parents before, Aditya and Kashapa, the parents of Vamanadev. And of course, we have Krishna's manifested in Krishna Bhara. So he had these other manifestations where he were their parents. So there's this eternal condition, that relationship that they have between him and Devaki and Vasudeva. So ultimately, there's nothing lost there, because this thing happens on cycles quite often, numerous times, that this is all going on. All his Purusha avatars, his Purusha forms, have relationships also. It's kind of interesting, these Purusha avatars, or there's 3 Purusha avatars that are expansions of the Chakravyuha. We have Vasudeva, and we have Sankarshan, and we have Pradyumna and Aniruddha. Expanding from these expand from Balaram, and the expansion from these Purushas, Karna-Dakshay, Garba-Dakshay, and Shir-Dakshay. Karna-Dakshay expands from Sankarshan. Garba-Dakshay expands from Prajuma, and Shir-Dakshay expands from Aniruddha. And each one has a specific purpose in this material world. And there's Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's interesting. There's a verse in there where they talk about this, where Krishnadas Kaviraj goes, and he mentions that actually these Purusha avatars have an affection for the material world. It's their energy. They enjoy coming and interacting and engaging in these different pastimes. And we can see in Srimad Bhagavatam, so many of them, that they're happy to do those pastimes. They like this material. It's the creation of theirs. I mean, if you make something, it's a rough analogy to try to relate to it to a certain degree. But if you do something, if you accomplish something, if you make something, especially when it comes to art, you kind of like, oh, wow, I did this. Or sometimes you might be even surprised that you've been able to do something, or feel good that you accomplished something. So similarly, the Lord, to even a greater degree, and on our such a small infinitesimal size that we have this little experience, he creates this energy for his purpose, and he enters it so he can enjoy, engage in all these pastimes. We try to emulate that also as the controller, but it always winds up bad for us, because we get entangled into it. So the end result is never good. So these, even Lord Chaitanya talks about, how he was lying on the ocean of milk. So there's Vishnu is lying there, and then Brahma up in Brahmaloka, there's Vishnu there, existing. Matter of fact, in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, he admits in the first part to Narada Muni that when at this point when the ocean, the earth, Bhumi, was being overburdened by these demons, and she went and she prayed to Brahma, and then all the Brahma and all the demigods, they go to Vishnu for shelter, to help. He talks about Vishnu was actually there in Brahmaloka, but he didn't want to bother him. He went to the Vaikuntha, or the milk ocean, and there he prayed to Vishnu there. And he said the reason was because, again, there's a self-centeredness. He didn't want him to leave. He wanted him to remain in this association. And similarly, in the heavenly planets, there's Vamanadeva, this four-armed form of Vamanadeva, always resides there. So if you go to heavenly planets, you'll see at this stage, in this existence, one will see Vamanadeva. If you can get to Brahmaloka, you'll see Vishnu there also. So there's many expansions of these Purushas, all engaged in activity that they enjoy. So these they're actually a part of this material world in a sense, even though they're the cause of it. Krishna is described as not having any tinge of anything with the material world. There's this fourth dimension that he exists in. This is also goes into chapter 2 of the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila. And quite a number of verses they talk about this. Krishna exists in this fourth dimension. We exist in a dimension of width, length, height, 3 dimensions. And then the Purushas, they also have an affinity. They exist in that 3-dimension space. But Krishna never comes. He never leaves Vrindavan, and he never enters into this 3rd dimension. So we see, how do we actually see Krishna? Krishna's actually existing here. His pastimes are going on, but he never leaves Vrindavan. And often we hear this, that those pastimes are even going on now in Vrindavan. But they have these called manifest and unmanifest pastimes, this prakas and aprakas pastimes. So Krishna has to give us these divine eyes in order to see this. Now, it exists, in a sense, we're seeing it now. We have painted pictures that kind of describe this. We have very descriptive stories. If Krishna is approaching his parents, he has a certain mentality when he approaches his parents, and he talks to his parents. So we relate it with the senses that we have now, and understanding relationships to a degree that how this is happening. So there's some insight there to to interact, that how these things interact between Krishna and us. I mean, scientists know that there's a fourth dimension. Mathematically, they understand it. They don't know anything about it. They understand what 3-dimension is, and mathematically they can understand 4th dimension. And if given enough time, scientists, through math, could prove the existence of God. The problem is there's no time. They don't have enough time. There's too much to understand in this material world that's temporary. But mathematically, he can even be proved to be existing. Okay, so let's see what this comments. Let's see what Jiva Goswami has to say. Bishop Santana Swami has a very short commentary, but let's go through what Jiva Goswami has to say. He brings out a little bit, another point, especially at the beginning. He said he addresses his father first since he is more prominent. So there's some etiquette in the sense, of course, that's not really popular currently today, but for overwhelming majority of the life or the existence of the material world, these types of things are more prominent. Kali Yuga only makes up 1/10 of the entire cycles of material world. There's 1,000 of them in one day of Brahma, and of those 1,000 cycles, each one, Kali Yuga is only 1/10 of the time, even though it's 432,000 years compared to the other ages. It's really, for us, it's like forever, it seems like. But so society that went on, Varnashram was established in Treta Yuga. Satya Yuga was meditation. Treta Yuga was sacrifice. So it was the method of worship. And then we had Dwapara Yuga was deity worship. So even in Satya Yuga, Dwapara is twice as long, so it's 864,000 years. Then you keep adding another 432 to that, so you got over 1 million years, and that's a long time in this Varnashram system that we're talking about, which coming to an end at this time right here. It's maybe for another, even 500 years ago, they still. It's a corrupted version of it. Even today, it's even more corrupted, and it doesn't really exist other than in books and information we're receiving. So he addressed his father first since he was more prominent. He addressed him as father to arouse within him parental affection, since Vasudeva did not have strong affection because he had knowledge of Krishna as the Lord, and saying that they could not enjoy his Kishore period. He means that they could not enjoy his full Kishore period, but only part. He does not mean to say that he has now passed the Kishore period, since it is said that Kishore Napa Yavanao, they attained Kishore period, but did not enter the Yavana period. They had just begun their Kishore period. One should consider the order of their age. According to the people of Raj, he lifted Govardhan Hill when he was 7 years old. Yeah, remember, we read that. Vav Sapta Ayano Balakva Mahadri Vrindaranam Tato no Jayate Sakta Raja Nata Tavat Maje. On the one hand, this boy is only 7 years old. And on the other, we see that he has lifted the great hill Govardhan. Therefore, O King of Raj, a doubt about your son arises within us. So this is the cowherd men are talking to. King is Nanda. There's 5 brothers. He's the middle age. He's in the middle of the 5, and he's because of the qualification, he is considered the king of the Rajas. So here again, he's really. It's important for them, for every, them to make this point, so all of us understand Krishna's age, eternal age. He's an eternal teenager, basically. He hailed up the mountain on the 3rd lunar day of the waxing moon of Kartik month. He completed the 7th year on the 8th lunar year of Ganabhadra month. Out of affection, the people stated that he was 7 years old, when actually he was 7 years old, 2 months, and 10 days old. Taking that date as a marker, one should calculate the age at which he performed the previous pastimes. One should consider the following statement and the example of quick development seen in a prince. So this commentary is prior to the one we read. Obviously, this is Jiva Goswami's commentary is 500 years ago, and then of course Vishwanath is later. I don't know if he used his commentaries, and obviously they read all these commentaries. There's one thing amazing about all this stuff we're reading. All these acharyas have read this books either. We get this information either far back for Sridhar Swami, the original Sridhar talks about in his commentaries, and Bhakti Siddhanta and Prabhupada, they all read what we're reading. And then they expounded upon this. They've kept it alive for us so that we can get the essence and understand what's going on, so that it can actually nourish our spiritual development, which is extremely important, because this is really what keeps it alive, keeps us alive in Krishna consciousness. Okay, so another verse he quotes here: Kalena lapena rajarse Brahma Krishnasta gokule agrishta janubi adbir vichar kramatur angasha. O King Pariksit, within a short time, Lord Balaram and Krishna began to walk very easily in Gokul on their legs by their own strength, without the need to crawl. They just hit the ground running. It seems like it's always like a big thing when your child starts to walk. It's like the parents like, there's some advancement going on here, even as a child, and then what the first words of the child say, that's also, excites the parents, But here is Krishna just, without even crawling around, they just get up and start walking. So this has to invoke some amazement in Nanda and Yasoda. Because everything a child does is positive. Their parents are super proud of them, They do something negative, they want to keep it, don't talk about that, But if it's something positive, then they want to just, and that's what we have. Krishna's whole life is being not only by his parents, but everybody is expressing their happiness and joy and talking about it and sharing it with other people. Okay. Therefore, it's not possible that Krishna lifted. Therefore, it's not impossible that Krishna lifted Govardhan when a little over 7 years old, since he was, moreover, the Supreme Lord. He killed Trinavarta when he was 1 year old. Damodar pastime took place at the beginning of his 3rd year, during Kartik month. Some days after that, they went from Gokul to Vrindavan. After 2 or 3 months, Krishna began herding calves. While herding the calves, he killed Anandana bhavet. Yet kamare hari kritam jagum pagandake ripaka. O great sage, how could things done in the past have been described as being done at the present? Okay. Krishna performed this pastime of killing Aghasura during his Kamora age. How then, during this Pagunda age, could the boys have described this incident as happened recently? Okay. That's because they were gone for a year. It was a whole year past. They were in sleep. And they woke up a year later.
Aloka provecha Nidrachari Utajiva Shesha Nidrachari Utaji Bolo Hari Hari Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Hayagriva. Na Shrima Vamana Shri Madhusudana Rajendra Nandana Shama Bhutana Gatana Kaitaba Shatana Jaya Dasarati Rama Jasoda Dulala Govinda Gopala Vrindavana Purandara Vrindavana Gopi Priya Jana Radhika Ramana Bhuvana Sundara Bara Ravana Takara Makana Taskara Gopi Jana Vastrahari Makana Taskara Brajera Rakala Gopa Vrindapala Chitai Vamsidari Rakala Gopa Vrindapala Yogendra Bandana Sri Nandanandana Brajajana Bayahari Vinavandana Sri Nandanandana Brajajana Bayahari Navina Nirada Rupa Manohara Mohana Bamshi Bihari Jashoda Nandana Kamsani Sudana Nikunjara Savivasi Kadamakanana Rasaparayana Vrindavipina Nivasi Rayana Vrindavipina Nivasi Ananda Vardana Premani Ketana Pula Shara Jojakakama Vardana Premani Ketana Pula Shara Jojakakama Opanagana Jita Vinodana Samasta Gunagana Dhamma Jita Vinodana Samasta Gunagana Jamuna Jivana Keli Parayana Manasa Chandra Chakora Jivana Keli Parayana Manasa Chandra Chakora Namasudarasa Goa Krishna Jasha Roka Vajana Manamora. Namasudarasa Goa Krishna Jasha Rako Vachana Manamora. Avivi Shesha Loka Provecha Nijachari Utajiva Viva Vai Shesha Loka Provecha Nijachari Utajiva Bolo Hari Hari Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Hayagriva Hari Mukunda Murari Rama Bolo Hari Hari Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Hayagriva Mukunda Murari Hare Krishna Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Radha Shama Sundar Radha Shama Sundar Radhe Shama Sundar Radha Shama Sundar Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Gauranitai Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Haribo Nitai Gauranga Jaya Nitai Gauranga Jaya Nitai Gauranga Jaya Sachinandana Jaya Sachinandana Nandana Jaya Sachinandana Jaya Sachinandana Gaura Hari Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radhe Golokananda Golokananda Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radhe Radha Golokananda Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Radhe Jaya Shri Radhe Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Giri Govardhan Jaya Shri Vrindavan Dham